The Massacre of Otrar in 1218, wherein a Mongol-sponsored caravan was slaughtered by the city's governor and brought the Mongol army into Khwarezmian, is one of the most famous stories of the Mongol conquests. Yet, rarely is much additional information given, or even why Chinggis Khan would begin a new war in Central Asia while China was still unconquered. This video will examine all of this. Khwarezmian-Mongol relations went back only a few years. In 1215, a Khwarezmian embassy traveled to China to contact Chinggis Khan for trade relations, while also gain information on this new, rising power. That year, the Jin capital of Chengdu fell to the Mongols, and its ruins were passed by the diplomats, who described the area being greasy with human fat, piles of bones everywhere. Once they met the Khan, he was happy to receive them and encouraged trade. It may come as a surprise, but Chinggis Khan was very concerned in promoting cross-continental trade. The Mongols were willing to pay high prices for access to formerly inaccessible luxury goods and fabrics, and the war in China had given them a surplus of silver to spend. Chinggis's interests with Khwarezm were purely economic at this point, and he willingly overpaid merchants to encourage them to come to Mongolia. In 1218, Chinggis sent an embassy to the Khwarezm Shah, Muhammad, to reaffirm their trade and friendship, sending at the same time a larger, slow-moving trade caravan. But things had changed since 1215. Now, the Qara-Khitai realm, which had been a buffer state between the two, had been eroded. Chinggis's general Ziv had taken most of it in 1217, and in early 1218 killed its final ruler, Huchulug, while the Khwarezmians took its western territory, making the two states neighbors. The speed with which the Mongols had overrun the once formidable Qara-Khitai must have shocked Shah Muhammad, who had hoped to conquer it himself. That alone would have made the Shah much warier of the Mongols in 1218 than he had been in 1215. The embassy which reached Shah Muhammad in Transoxania did not go smoothly. This embassy relied on three Muslim envoys from territories the Shah ruled: Mahmud Khwarezmi, Ali Khwaja Bukhari, and Yusuf Kanka Uttrari, who brought gifts of ivory, jade, precious ingots, and a gold nugget from China as large as a camel's hump. Their message from Chinggis opened with the Shah being placed on the level of the Khan's dearest sons. Naturally, Shah Muhammad was furious at this. How dare any man, even a great conqueror, consider the Shah of Khwarezm a son, implying the superiority of the father? The Shah then took Mahmud Khwarezmi aside, interrogating him to find the true intentions of the Khan. Mahmud Khwarezmi, though, was a cool customer, talking down the Shah and convincing him that the Great Khan's interest was only trade, and the Mongol armies could not hope to compare to those of the mighty Shah. Trade was, I must reiterate, the extent of Chinggis Khan's interest in Khwarezm. Chinggis Khan's war in China was far from finished. He had humbled the mighty Jurchen Jin Empire, but not defeated it. His return to Mongolia in 1216 was temporary, to rest his troops and secure his borders from uprising in Siberia, the western steppe, and potential threat from Huchulug having taken control of Qara-Khitai. While he sent his general Nicola to China to continue battling the Jin, Chinggis's intention was to return and complete that campaign himself. It is important to note that the world-conquering ideology had not been developed yet. His long-term ambitions for China were vague, and beyond that his aspirations cannot be determined. Most likely, as historian David Morgan said, the Mongols only came around to the idea of conquering the world once they found out they were in fact doing so, which was after the Khwarezmian campaign. Anyways, Mahmud Khwarezmi succeeded in placating Shah Muhammad, and he let the envoys go without issue, reaffirming trade and friendship with the Mongols. As mentioned above, the envoy to Shah Muhammad left at similar time to a trade caravan from Mongolia. We are told this was quite a significant effort by the Mongols. Chinggis Khan ordered his family and generals to provide Muslims from their retinues to serve in the caravan, as well as capital. The Altan Urag provided much of the financial backing to this trip, intending to use it perhaps to convince the West of the wealth present in Mongolia, and why it was worth to do trade with the Mongol Empire. Rather than world domination, Chinggis Khan in 1218 wanted to open up trade across Asia. The caravan, between 100 to 450 strong, reached Otrar in summer 1218 on the frontier of the Khwarezmian Empire. Otrar was at that time governed by Inalchuk, a relation to Shah Muhammad's domineering mother, Terken Hatun. There's a pretty good chance you know what happened next. Inalchuk ordered the seizure of the merchants' goods on the pretext of them being spies, and ultimately murders them, with a single camel driver escaping to inform Chinggis Khan. What is often contradictory, though, is the place of Shah Muhammad within this, whether he directly ordered it or not. What's interesting is that, from our authors who worked for the Mongols and some who hated them, all of them put the blame on Inalchuk and Shah Muhammad on a combination of their greed and suspicions, yet disagree on whether the Shah actively ordered their deaths or not. Now, the charge of espionage was probably true. The Mongols relied heavily on merchants to provide them intelligence on their foes. Plus, Shah Muhammad had already sent an embassy purely intended to gather intel on the Mongols in 1215. So, even if Shah Muhammad did not order their deaths, he helped himself to the spoils. It begs the question, what was Muhammad thinking if he did order it? Certainly, this would lead to war between the two powers. There are some suggestions. One is that the rapid fall of Qara-Khitai to the Mongols had unnerved Muhammad to the point that he saw war as inevitable. A particularly interesting suggestion comes from Dmitry Timokhin, focusing on the relationship with the Shah's mother, Terken Hatun. Terken Hatun was from a Kongli tribe, a fierce woman who butted heads with her son and acted as her own ruler within Khwarezm, appointing her kinsmen to positions of power and counteracting Muhammad's orders. It was said if officials received orders from Shah Muhammad and Terken Hatun, whichever was received later was followed. Timokhin suggests that the order to detain and kill the merchants came not from the Shah, but from Terken Hatun, not trusting the new neighbors who had so swiftly swallowed up the Qara-Khitai. She may have intended to force her son into action, seeing war coming with the Mongols. Of course, it may have just been pure spiteful greed and human avarice at play, to such terrible consequences. It is also useful to note another potential factor. As discussed in a previous video, Jochi and Subutai may have, on their return from defeating a Merkit Kipchak alliance in the western steppe, fought Shah Muhammad and his army. The Shah had a larger force, and even though the Mongols told them that they only sought free passage and had no quarrel with him, the Shah attacked. The battle was itself inconclusive, the Mongols slipping away in the night, but their ferocity was said to have struck fear into the Shah, making him paranoid to ever face the Mongols in open battle. We don't know, however, exactly when it occurred though, as the sources confuse it with other campaigns and dates. It may have been in 1209 to 1210, or in 1218 to 1219. I personally find Dr. Atwood's arguments most convincing, that it must have occurred in similar time to the massacre of Otrar in 1218 or even early 1219. If it occurred slightly before the massacre, say perhaps after the first embassy sent by Chinggis Khan, it may have influenced the rash decision to kill the merchants at Otrar. Atwood theorizes it must have been around similar time, or Chinggis learned of the events in similar time, for if one had happened well before the other, it would have put the Mongols on warning, so to speak. Whatever the motivation for the massacre, it was a heinous, unprovoked crime and threatened war between the Mongols and Khwarezm. Yet, as evidence of Chinggis's desire to avoid war, when he learned of the massacre in the fall, he didn't send an army, but another embassy, led by a Muslim ambassador, Ibn Khafraj Bogra, and two Mongol notables. Ibn Khafraj Bogra had experience in Khwarezm, having served Muhammad's father Tekish. They protested to Muhammad, telling him that war could still be avoided and trade resumed if Muhammad sent Inalchuk to Mongolia for punishment. all else would be forgiven. Muhammad was in an unenviable position. If he didn't give up an Altruk, war would come to Khwarezm from a powerful enemy. While if he did give up an Altruk, he would antagonize the powerful faction of Kipchak Kangli officials loyal to his mother, Turken Khatun. Thus, Shah Muhammad II of Khwarezm made the fateful decision in late 1218 to execute Ibn Khafraj Bogra, breaking, as it was, the cardinal rule of diplomacy with the Mongols. Do not kill the envoys. Ibn Khafraj's Mongol accomplices had their beards burnt off and were sent back to Chinggis Khan. War was declared, and Shah Muhammad did not realize it, but he had just made a decision which changed the course of Eurasian history. One final note remains, and it is why Chinggis Khan saw this as reason to commit to war in a distant country while the Jin were still unconquered. We can break it down thus. First of all, the Jin had been greatly weakened. Chinggis likely imagined it would not be long before they were totally conquered. His general Michal was already campaigning in China, a holding action to keep up the pressure until Chinggis could return. Now bordering the Khwarezmian Empire, if Chinggis chose to ignore the Shah, he would give the ambitious Muhammad freedom to attack and annex the newly taken Qara-Khitai territory. Such a loss would greatly undermine Mongol power and influence. The Mongols also seem to have overestimated the military ability of the Shah, believing they needed to mobilize a major force and quickly lest he attack first. The Shah had already attacked the Mongol force, that of Jochi and Subutai, demonstrating again that he could not be trusted. The loss of so many Mongol-supplied merchants was a major hit, as it has been called, in the pocketbook to Chinggis Khan. Recapturing the loot would recoup these losses and reopen the cross-continental trade Chinggis Khan had been trying to encourage. Further, the sanctity of envoys was a time-honored tradition in Central Asia and Mongolia. Such an assault on the honor of the Mongol Empire was unforgivable and demanded to be punished. To let such an affront go without a Mongol response would be unthinkable. The stage was set for the Mongol invasion of the Khwarezmian Empire, a period of bloodshed and cruelty which stands out in the centuries. That shall be the focus of our next video.